Yes.
The national anthem.
While still standing, shall we sing the national anthem?
1, 2, 3, go. Arise, O compatriot, Nigeria's cause obey, to serve our father's land with love and strength and faith. The labors of our heroes shall never be in vain. We serve without our mind, one nation bounding freedom, peace and unity.
O God, our Creator, we ask that you grant us your reasonings, the truth, the wisdom, the humility, the understanding to guide our followers right, so that all we bring to do prove truth and progress will prevail. In the name of Jesus.
Registered by the Corporate Affairs Commission, members of the Board of Trustees of the Association of Nigeria Licensed Electronic Agents. That is the authentic Board of Trustees. Now, at the head of that board is no other than Alhaji Taiwo Mustafa. The vice chairman of that board, we call him Akatak, Chief Dennis Okafor. The secretary of the board, indefatigable, Prince Taye Michael Oyoni. Next following is the juggernaut, one of the builders of the Association of Nigerian Licensed Customs Agents. He is a former national president of this association. His name, Chief Ernest Elochukwu. Then, of course, we have a former vice president, also a member of the Board of Trustees, in the person of Dayo Aziz. Yeah, sitting on the high table is two-term chairman of the Apapa chapter of the Association of Nigerian Licensed Customs Agents. Also a two-term zonal coordinator. Comrade John Dakasina of Fobide. Well, seated amongst them, I will maybe ask the chief to introduce him better. But I will skip him for the meantime and then introduce our suspended zonal secretary in the person of Alhaji Bayo Miyasu Oyekolu Very quickly before we move on, for the chairman to make his speech, I will give this to introduce the last person for the high table. I'm very sorry. I ought to apologize before getting to this stage. His name is, I know him as Arnold, but I wanted the background to why he should be sitting at the high table. From what I gather, Chief Arnold, sorry. From what I gather, he was a very active member of Chief Eluchukwu's, during Chief Eluchukwu's regime. And he has ever continued to play very active roles. You are welcome, Chief. Now, having said that, I'm going to pass the mic straight to the Chairman Board of Trustees, Alhaji Taiwo Mustafa, for his speech.
ANLCA, great ANLCA, great professionals. I pray and I hope that ANLCA shall continue to be great and greater. Gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues in the board, and the great members of the Association of Nigerian Licensed Customs Agents. You are all welcome to this press conference this morning. I wouldn't mind, just before we start, I can see that some pillars are blocking some people. You can adjust your seat so that we can be able to look at each other very well. However, what we are going to do this morning is going to be more of interactive press conference. I believe most of us are already with copies of this press release, and most of the issues have been addressed there, but I'm only going to give some explanations of some issues there to be clearer. My name is Alhaji Taiwo Mustafa, and by the power of God and to the glory of ANLCA members today, I happen to be the board chairman of ANLCA. And perhaps until when God decides otherwise, myself and my colleagues in the board will remain in the board till the year 2026. What we are going to do here and what we are going to explain to each other is this. Our attention was drawn to the wild dance of the former president and his cohorts, his colleagues, in the madness that they displayed about 2 weeks ago by way of going or saying that they have inaugurated another board. And that was why we decided that there is need to react to that. However, just like somebody asked me this morning, that why is it taking us time to react or to make this press conference? And I ask, when a dog is barking at you, boo, 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 do you have to, on your own, as a normal person, bark at the dog again? No. So we decided that there was no point in barking at them while they are barking the way they were barking. How did we get to this stage in ANLCA today? In 2014, precisely April 13th, and February 14th, sorry. We were all gathered as ANLCA members from the east, from the west, from the north. We all gathered at Wari to elect the new Board of Trustee members. Incidentally, before that election, we all knew that this board was going to be a unique one because of the kind of euphoria that went with it in the campaign. The election came, and out of all of us that contested, 9 of us were elected as board members, including the former president, Tony, the Jew, or the suspended president. And we were 9. When we were inaugurated, the idea thing was for us immediately elect a chairman among the 9 of us. But for certain reasons within us, we decided we should be suspended. But however, temporarily, I was made to be the coordinator on the board, and now on that basis, I acted for 9 months before eventually we elected the board chairman. Henry Inyokwu was elected as the chairman, and of course he contested along with Chief ANLCA-BOT, and it won that election by 1 vote, and that was 4 against 3. We forged ahead, and everything was peaceful until when we had to go for the NECOM election. That's the National Executive Committee election in Enugu in 2018. Shortly before then, the usual thing in ANLCA, the norm in ANLCA was like, when you have a president who happens to come from the background of the ethnic background in Nigeria, we try to have the the chairman of the Board of Trustees from another ethnic background for certain convenience and to balance the character. So we decided then that since Chief Eluchukwu had already conceded the victory to Henry Inyokwu at that time, and Henry remained in the board as the chief board chairman till 2018, then having realized that Prince Olayiwola Shitu, who was the president then, was going to leave for another president to come in. Having spent 8 years, so the idea thing was that the president should come from another ethnic background. So the Igbos in our midst picked the nomination form. And it was agreed then that no Yoruba man should pick the nomination form for the post of the secretary. For the post of the president, sorry. However, within us in the board, we discussed it, and because Tony Iju was coming out as the president, and being one of us who was in the board with us, he made this announcement that he was going to contest as the president. And we all welcomed it within ourselves. We hugged ourselves that same day in the board meeting. But we received a letter from the Odua group that with the coming election, the NECOM election, there was going to be the 3 key positions in the hands of our brothers who are Igbos. And that is the position of the president, the chairman of the board, and that of the chairman of the ASECO, that's the electoral board. So in view of that we should consider it and concede one of the positions to the Yorubas. So we discussed it within ourselves, and one of us suggested, and that is Peter Obi, that we should wait till after the NECOM election in Enugu before we decide on who was going to be the next chairman of the board. To the glory of God, the election came at Enugu, and we thank God
though there was some, issues on the elections, but then we decided that it has come, it has gone, and we should all work together as one. So the loser of the election considered and congratulated Tony Eju as the president. So we moved on. Thereafter, the next meeting of the board, the issue was raised. That now that we have Tony Eju as the president, Henry Njoku as the chairman, and Raymond Oyinba as the chairman of ASECO, then one of the positions should be considered to another ethnic group. So we decided right then that Yorubas should take the position of the chairman of the board. Taiwo Mustafa was persuaded to take this position among the Yorubas who were in the board. And at the end of the day, Taiwo Mustafa took up that position. Between when the election took place in Enugu and when we had to do the inauguration of the next NECOM, we had 3 months in between. And 3 months was enough for us to have decided and elect another board chairman. But however, Henry Njoku decided he wasn't going to call the meeting of the board within that period. But a day, as in our usual tradition, for every event in ANLCA, a day before the event, the board was always meeting to decide on what we were going to do or what we were going to decide in that event. So we decided, or we met a night before the inauguration of NECOM that brought in Tony Eju as the next president. And it was right there we decided that we should elect another chairman of the board. It was resisted, but we threw it to vote among the 8 of us. Remember, we were 9, but as at that time, Tony Eju had already become president, so he's no longer a member of the board. Yes. So we were left with 8 of us. It was resisted by Henry Njoku that election wasn't going to take place that day. But we all insisted that it was a case of agreement. It was a case of, the chairman of the board is not constitutional in ANLCA, but it was an arranged thing that we cannot be working as a group without having a leader. Please mark that. The chairman of the board of ANLCA is not in any way written in our constitution, but it was an agreed norm that we should always have a board chairman and a board secretary, so as for the purpose of for administrative purposes. So we decided that election was going to vote, and 5 of us voted for the election to vote, and 5 of us voted for Taiwo Mustafa as the chairman that same night. Chief Dennis Okafor Denka was elected as the vice chairman, and Prince Tai Oyini was elected as the board secretary. 2 of them, that is Henry Njoku and Peter Obi, decided to go the other way around by way of trying to be violent that night. But we were mature enough not to allow it to get to that level. We managed ourselves and we all left that way. Remember the late Are, Sunday Shutu was among us. But he decided to abstain from that election. He didn't vote for either A nor B. Please mark that. So it was a case of 5 against 2. Then, after the inauguration, we all met Tony Eju as the next president. And we told him what has happened in the board. And we agreed that as far as we are concerned, we are one. And you are one of us, you are our brother, and we are prepared to work with you to make your administration entirely right. For best reasons known to them, without us knowing there was anything hidden, they decided they weren't going to honor that election that we had that night. And that was the beginning of the whole crisis. Having written series of letters to him as the president, he never for one day replied one. We requested for meeting with him as the president. We didn't know what was going on. Then suddenly Peter Obi went to court. Peter Obi went to court and sued those of us who were newly elected, especially Taiwo Mustafa, that I couldn't have been the chairman of the board because we were not registered. As at that time, we were not registered with corporate affairs. As at that time, when we came in, when we were elected in Warri, 4 out of 9 of us were already board members. Why 5 of us were coming in newly into the board? So what they did then was to take the corporate affairs registration form that was initiated then to go to court that they had already been registered. That is Henry Ijoku, Peter Obi had already been registered, and in that case, without Taiwo Mustafa and others being registered, they were yet to be board members. And Taiwo Mustafa couldn't have been the chairman of the board. The case lingered on, and one thing became apparent. The judge, that is Justice Aikawa, before delivering his judgment, kept emphasizing to both parties, especially our lawyers, go back home and reconcile within yourself. Because if I deliver this judgment, it's not going to favor the both sides. We didn't know what he meant by that or where he was going. Eventually, Justice Aikawa delivered that judgment and said that Taiwo Mustafa should stop parading himself as the board chairman. We took it that way, that is law. As a board member. As board members. Now, until we are registered as board members, we are registered with corporate affairs, we are yet to be authentic board members. We took it that way. We obeyed the law. We didn't bother ourselves to appeal that judgment. Then we went ahead to initiate the registration with corporate affairs. Only for us to now realize along the line that Henry Ijoku, Peter Obi, and Mukaila Babatunde Abdulaziz had already gone to Corporate Affairs Commission to covet an ANLCA file. Remove it entirely from the shelf. And it took months before we could locate that file. When eventually we located the file, we saw all sorts of things that were already done inside the file, but we shouldn't go into that now. So we made all the necessary moves to do the registration. Took us some time, and it was then we realized one thing that's very, very key. That the so-called form they were carrying about, the one they even used to go to court, the registration process was never concluded. But because the corporate affairs had already received the form and stamped it, they took that to the court. And it was on the basis of that, the court gave that judgment. So it was like deceiving the court in the first place. So, the corporate affairs brought out the file, gave us that since 2001, the Association of Nigerian Licensed Customs Agents, corporate affairs calculated everything up to date, and we had to pay from our pocket. We paid up to date to make ANLCA come back as a corporate body in corporate affairs registration online. It was on the basis of that same day when we got the registration done. Between me, without telling my board members, I put a call across to Tony Ju and said, this is what we experienced in the last few months that we tried to do this registration. But however, the registration has been done. And with the registration being done, without having any ill feelings, we didn't register just 5 of us. We went ahead to register all the 8 of us. Irrespective of the ill feelings or grudges they were having against us, we still went ahead to register the 8 of us. And we called that, Tony, you are the president. Call a meeting of the 8 of us, making you to be 9. Even if our tenure was going to end in the next few months, we shouldn't go on the basis of he'll finish. Let us meet within ourselves. He said, okay, he was going to work on that. And that was the end. He never called back on that. Without knowing that they were already making moves again to go and cancel that registration with corporate affairs. Only for corporate affairs to call us that there were petitions against that registration. In that case, we should come back with the registration certificate and we should come and hold a meeting. And you know what we got to realize again along the line was that Peter Obi and some other people went to the corporate affairs to say that because the tenure was going to end, that they were not interested in that registration again, to cancel it. And that they were both parties impersonating some of us. Somebody standing in my own name to say it was me, and we agreed that it should be cancelled. It was then we now made move, and corporate affairs say, but you guys were here some weeks back, and you said we should cancel it, and it's on the basis of that we wrote this letter. And I said, no. That was big lies. Nobody, on what basis are we going to say you should cancel the registration? The registration has already been done, it has already been done. So, on the strength of that, we decided that, okay, if that is the game behind it, you were the one that went to court in the first place. The issue of court never came to our mind. Peter Obi was the one who went to court. We brought out the judgment. The judgment says you are not yet board members until you are registered with corporate affairs. And on the basis of that, on the strength of that, we went back to court and said we want the court to actually affirm this registration. And in Federal High Court Suit 599 of 2020, dated May 22nd of 2020, Justice Oguntoyinbo of the Federal High Court, Ikoyi, gave the order that this board should remain until determination of the case. Let me clarify one thing here again. In their camp and in their own, what would I call it? Maybe out of ignorance, that the court order was only for 14 days. And I'm going to give it to the press. If there is any way you have seen 14 days or 2 weeks here, it is quite written there in this court order that until determination of the case, the court order remains. So they said they have obeyed the court order for 2 weeks, and in that case, thereafter, they were not going to obey the court order again. So they went about again in their naked dice in the market square. Then, some of our members now came up to say, if this is not enough, the same board that conducted the election of Tony Yu and others to become the national executives at Enugu, that means as at that time, when the board was taking that action, you were taking the action not as authentic board members. And in that case, the court should nullify all the actions that the board had already taken so far. And the same judge that gave Peter Obi the judgment is the same court, the same judge that he went back to. That is Justice Aikawa. And in Federal High Court Suit number 921 of the same 2020, dated
26th August.
20th July 2020, Justice Aikawa gave the order again, saying that Tony Iju, Kayode Fanito, Mukaila Babatunde Abdelaziz, and all others, 24 of them, remain suspended from office till the determination of the court case again. Now you can see the wisdom behind where the judge was referring us to in the first place before he gave that judgment in the first place. That if he was going to give that judgment, that both parties were not going to gain out of it. And in that case, we should, or we ought to have gone back to our house to go and reconcile within ourselves. Now, on the strength of that again, I personally put a call across to Tony Ju and said, I think it is high time we meet within ourselves again. It is your administration, and we want ANLCA to move forward. So he decided that he was going to call that meeting, and he called 9 of us. That 9 of us who were in the board members, and including himself, and we met at Santiago Hotel. And ideally, we expected that whatever is the issue, the bottom line has to do with recognizing the election that was already conducted. If you are not going to recognize it, what is the way forward? And what you asked there was that we should give Henry Njoku some time before handing over to Taiwo Osaka. And the question some of us asked was, we conducted your own election in Enugu. Did Olayiwola Shitu ask you to give him some time before handing over to you as the president? So if he didn't do that, on what ground are you asking that we should give Henry Njoku some time before handing over to Taiwo Osaka? But however, we gave him that honor as the president. We said, how many months do you actually want? He couldn't specify. And at the end of the day, we agreed between myself, himself, and Henry Njoku that okay, let us give you for 3 months. And as soon as we came out of that meeting, one thing that shocked me first was a text message I received from him to say, no, 3 months was not going to work. But I couldn't tell any of my colleagues in the board, so as not to erupt another. We kept quiet. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, nobody was talking. It was almost 1 year we now called and said, look, the fact that we have kept quiet was in the interest of peace in ANLCA. But where you have injustice, you are inevitably making room for crisis. So come back to the boardroom and come and decide on what way actually you want to go. He never bothered to call us till today, after that Santiago meeting that we had. He never bothered to reply about 5 letters that we wrote to him. And that was how the crisis kept faltering. Now, the next move we saw was that they were going to conduct elections in all the other chapters that the election hadn't been conducted in. They went to Kano, they went to Abuja, and the ideal thing as the board members who were actually registered and in charge of the electoral issues in ANLCA was for us to kick against it. But at the same time, we talk to ourselves and say, in the interest of peace, let us be watching this guy. As at that time, he had already been suspended as the chairman, as the president of ANLCA. So on what ground were you doing that? But just because he felt like he didn't want to obey any of the court orders. And we kept wondering and asking ourselves questions. Is Tony Ju actually a politician in Nigeria? He went to contest election in the House of Rep in Anambra, and he lost that election. And one-on-one, I've asked him, if you had won that election, if you had won, you lost that election, if you had gone to court, and the court ruled that you should take over that position in the House of Rep, and the man who is the sitting representative in the House of Rep, representing that your constituency, had resisted it, what would you have said? What would you have done? You are not an honored politician. So, On the strength of that, the crisis kept going on in ANLCA. Now, after conducting all those elections, and we were watching to allow peace to reign, the next move we now did was to have another AGM in Owerri. They went ahead to hold the so-called AGM in Owerri, where they said they have elected another board member. They said they have elected 7 members as new set of the board members. So we had to go to court again to notify whatever they have done in that AGM. We believe in the law. We believe in the law. We believe in the legal process in Nigeria. Rather than resolving to self-help or resolving to violence, we decided we should go back to court. And the Federal High Court, under Justice Louis Alagwa, gave another court order in suit number 79 of 2001, nullify all that they have done in that AGM at all. So it became null and void. But that is not still enough for them. Just about 2 weeks ago again, they now came up to say they wanted to do a leg meeting. Before then, let me put it this way, that having realized that they were losing out, they came up to say that some of their conduct in ANLCA was jeopardizing the interests of the NECO, and that they were inviting us to a disciplinary committee. And I asked myself, who's supposed to invite each other to disciplinary committee? Is it you that is disobeying the law of the land? Or is it me that has kept quiet those of us who have kept quiet in the interest of peace in ANLCA, to allow you to keep parading yourself and dancing naked in the market square that's supposed to discipline each other? So we ignored them. And they came up to say they have gone to the disciplinary committee and they have suspended themselves. They have suspended themselves. And we want to re-emphasize this here today, that as far as we are concerned in ANLCA, and as far as the majority members of ANLCA is concerned today in Nigeria, Tony Iju remains suspended as ANLCA president. And I want to re-emphasize to all of us that today, ANLCA has become a laughing stock in marine industry. It is quite a pity. But on our own side, we will try to do everything possible to start restructuring and repairing all the damage they have done. And one of the aspects that we are going to take, or actions we are going to take very soon, is that the board in our capacity, we are going to call an AGM, and the idea, we are going to appoint acting national executive. Great professionals, gentlemen of the press, I want to say here again that we welcome all of you to this press conference. We thank all of you. We thank all the ANLCA members for the cooperation you have been given. And we want to enjoin you that you remain calm, remain peaceful. And just like I said at the beginning, when a dog is barking at you, you then end up barking at the dog again. So that there should be a difference between a normal human being and that of an animal. You are all welcome to this place.
Stand up, please, stand up. Take your hand.
today to hear the truth and to know about the Makaba dance that Mr. Tony and his people have been exhibiting all around everywhere. So, when my chairman was speaking, he was saying suspended Tony Iju. Tony Iju was suspended and removed by the courts, not by us, but by the courts. Court removed him as the president and warned him not to parade himself.
Together with his court. And they continue to parade themselves.
So the purpose of this
Conference today
is for the whole world to know what is happening and to know the truth. And when you know the truth is going to set us free. So that is why we are here, for us to know the truth. So that you can be able to explain or ask you why is ANLCA in trouble. So that your people know that it is not the issue that is causing the problem. Thank you very much.
Great professionals. Justice can only be delayed. Justice can never be denied. You have heard from Justice Mount. And what the chairman explained is the details of what has happened. It is unfortunate when you are going to, this one that happened to ANLCA is a good lesson. And let me thank the press for their turnout to hear the truth. And I want to appeal that they should do what is called constructive journalism. When you want to set up a city, you have to look back. If you put two young men to be the head of a city, is either that city is on fire or the city will not exist. Unfortunately, we have made a mistake of putting the people and dancing legally in the market in the affairs of an association that have been existing since 1954. Some of these boys, because when men are talking, boys shouldn't talk. But unfortunately, we've allowed boys to be dancing. While the leaders thought that you have built a house, you furnish the house, you hand over the house to children. Any children doesn't know how the house was built or how you bought the land can sell the house. What they are trying to do now is to destroy ANLCA. But let's thank God that we are matured. We are grandfathers. And I believe in principle that if I want to go back to history, we will explain to you from morning till night. More than 25-30 letters have been written to the NECO for reconciliation. All proof abortive. So I just, like what the Vice Chairman said, Iju has been removed and the sand removed. We cannot, what they wanted is for us to go and quarrel and kill people, and we are not prepared for that. What we believe now is the rule of law, and the rule of law will prevail. I pray that at the end of the day, we are going to roll our drums to celebrate.
The position of the chairman of the board is it is not in the constitution of ANLCA. What is in the constitution of ANLCA? That is ANLCA will elect board members. So, but 9 of us were elected. But within ourselves, when we are having meeting 9 members, someone has to lead to be the chairman to direct the affairs of the board. It's an administrative arrangement within us. So that is where what we did. And the past chairman of the board, which is Enejoku, have been occupying that position for 10 years. He took over from Joe Idonike. And our president, our former president, Shibelishuku, spent 8 years as the president. And he was the chairman of the board for 8 years. And then Tony Shitu came, the same thing was the chairman. So when the time came for him to leave, he didn't want to leave. We don't know whether there is some putti in the position of the chairman. Maybe myself will want to fight for the position of the chairmanship. So that's something that is in that chairmanship position. If we go round. So that is on a lighter mood. So and that is why we are here. The certificate, we have our national secretariat sitting there. The document of the house is with this register board. So, what are we talking about? Then by the time they went to Enugu to elect their kangaroo BOT, they applied to the Corporate Affairs Commission to register their new board. And the Corporate Affairs replied them, no, you cannot register because you are already having an existing BOT until the expiration of their time. So whatever they are doing is null and void. Thank you.
Yes, this is one of the announcements I wanted to make. That you just have a pull-out or a photocopy of that. Yeah, just like the chairman has said. Actually, the issue is that why we have seemed not to be so active or just joining issues is what the chairman has expressed. We don't have to dance naked in the marketplace with some other people because we are worried about this association. This association helped make some of us. And we have also contributed so much to build it. And then to watch some people come in and destroy it just overnight, we just needed to be careful. As we were here, I saw a publication by Shipping World, and it captured a whole lot of things. And I'll also ask people to read this too, because there is a historical antecedent to what is happening, that you have an understanding with people you thought are gentlemen, and before you know it, you sleep and wake, and then they deny ever seeing you the day you had that understanding with them. Are they the kind of people that ANLCA needs? And so, like the chairman said, we will embark on rejuvenating ANLCA again, because we have had some unconfirmed posts. Like some people say that they will be the last president of ANLCA. In other words, there is a plan to dismember ANLCA, and we will not allow it because God will not allow it. So, on the note of what we are doing, you just have to help us, especially the people in the media. Some of the time when I see some analysis being done, I'm not talking about reportage. Because if somebody calls you and say that he is king, you report that he said he is king. But then when people are making analysis, and then they are even going overboard to cast aspersions on some people, the question I've always asked, could there be any person more ANLCA than myself? Because I said I've seen it all. Why I'm quiet is that I've been a secretary, a vice chairman, a chapter chairman, and national president. And, well, and now I'm a board member. I don't know what else. But by the way, being a board member goes without any material gain at all. That I go to this meeting, of course, like I've said, from the time I started earning money, I started also spending money because I want to be comfortable. That I fly business class when I can, I spend in the best hotel when I can, and all that. It's all from my own expenses. For the interest of ANLCA, because what? ANLCA has been an umbrella that has actually covered every agent. And when ANLCA was at its peak, every agent had a comfort. But now what are we having? Many agents, in those days when you give an agent a document, you are giving him a hope. But now when you give, when an agent collects a document from an importer, he starts having palpitation because he doesn't know what will come out at the end of the day. All thanks to the rudderless, clueless leadership we have. And that is what we're saying, that maybe it's high time we have it changed. Thank you very much for coming.
I publish a Pinnacle Time newspaper, and I equally write for Vanguard newspaper. 2 questions. Number 1, the chairman board reiterated here today that the board has made a number of overtures to NECOM, and that this overture, some of them were in the form of a correspondence. About a year ago, I was invited to one of their press conferences where the now suspended national president claimed or debunked the fact that the board had ever reached out in terms of communication. So my question now is, can we have a proof, at least even if it's just 1 letter written by the board to NECOM seeking for meeting and all that? Number 2, the suspended national president equally said that it is the board that has actually